10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3.
The dictionary defines a lens as a lentil-shaped piece of glass that can concentrate or focus rays of light to produce an image. Although, hopefully, a little better than this. And it works as the result of a fundamental physical law. It's well known that if something is viewed half under water, it appears distorted. For when rays of light pass from one medium to another, in this case from water to air, they are bent. The light rays from the goldfish are refracted before reaching our eyes, making it look bigger. The bowl is acting like a lens. A more practical lens is made from solid optical glass, with its surfaces curved. And this lens can make parallel rays of light converge at one point. The distance from this point of focus to the lens is called its focal length. This is a cylindrical lens that only works in one plane. It's specially made for demonstrations. But it's a small step to realize a completely circular lens which works in all planes. Here it's focusing a slide from a projector. The picture looks all right because it's so small, but on a big screen it would be fuzzy around the edges and distorted. So a high-quality lens is made from a combination of several elements which are designed to cancel out each other's defects. A lens like this will produce a near-perfect image. To summarize, when a ray of light hits the junction of two different media, it is refracted or bent. A lens is made from optical glass with one or both of its surfaces curved so that all parallel rays of light striking them will converge at a single point, separated from the lens by its focal length. Now a lens also has an angle of view related to its focal length. The longer the focal length, the narrower the angle of view. These angles are measured horizontally because that is how we plan. The first television cameras were fitted with one fixed focus lens and incidentally had an upside-down optical viewfinder image. This camera was in operation in the BBC's first television studio in 1936. But although a challenge to all concerned, it was nevertheless inconvenient and restricting to have only one image size. So later cameras were designed with several different focal length lenses, mounted on a turret. This gave a choice of 4 different angles of view from the same camera position. Meanwhile, work was going on into a variable focal length lens, which led to the development of the zoom. And its principle is very simple. Once again, an image is formed from a slide projector by a single element lens. But this time the image is on a translucent back projection screen, and a second lens element is used to focus the picture onto another screen. And if the second lens is moved, the image it produces changes size. Since a fixed focal length lens gives a fixed image size, then clearly this is effectively changing the focal length of the combined lenses. The image goes out of focus as the second lens is moved, but this can be corrected by adding further lens elements. It is a waste of light to focus the first image on a screen, but as the image is a real one, it can be produced in mid-air. So moving the second element magnifies the image produced by the first, or focusing element, and this gives the zooming effect. It's a long step from this simple demonstration to a practical zoom, even one as old and elementary as this. But it does show the complex interrelationship of mechanics and optics. Modern zooms use even more lens elements and can vary their focal length by a ratio of 10:1 or more. So from this black and white turret camera, it has been possible to progress to this, the current generation of color zoom cameras. So what is the difference between a set of fixed lenses and a zoom? Apart from ease of changing shot size, very little. Zoom cameras are even fitted with a shot box, a bank of buttons which are programmed to preset the zoom lens to the same angles as the turret lenses would give. A zoom is, in effect, an infinite set of fixed lenses. This camera is fitted with a 10:1 zoom with an angle of view variable from 50 to 5 degrees. But not all zooms can work close-up. The picture is going soft because the camera taking it cannot work closer than 3 feet. But camera 3, fitted with a close-up lens, can push into 16 inches and still hold focus. Make sure the right lenses are available for close-up working. So the widest angle of view of the normal studio zoom is 50 degrees, and it can vary its angle of view down to 5 degrees. And remember that when the scale changes, the angle does not. So on a 1:50 floor plan, the angles are still 5 degrees up to 50 degrees. And that, for the director and his cameraman, is where the problems begin, because the characteristics of each lens' angle of view are different. These posts are about 3 feet apart. Camera 3 starts by looking at them on a 5-degree lens. Note the relative sizes of the two sticks. As 3 slowly zooms out, notice that the sticks are apparently moving away from the screen, and that the overall scene is getting smaller. But the relationship of the size of stick 1 to stick 2 is the same, which is just what one would expect from how a zoom works. Now the camera is on its widest angle, 50 degrees. If the camera now goes back to a close-up, not by zooming, but by tracking in, watch what happens to the relative size of the two sticks. The foreground one is getting bigger in relation to the background one. The front stick is now just touching the top and bottom of frame as before, but it's not just the magnification that has increased. The perspective or relative size of foreground to background has changed too. With 2 cameras on the scene at once, 3 pushed in on a 50-degree angle and 2 pulled back on 5 degrees, the difference is clear. Narrow angle on the left, wide angle on the right. And this perspective change has another effect as well. Camera 4 is on 24 degrees. This is the angle that, with normal viewing distances from a television monitor, produces a perspective effect most similar to the human eye. First, 4 zooms out to 50 degrees and tracks in at the same time. The board now looks much longer. Now 4 is going to track out and zoom in, again at the same time. Notice how the perspective is changing. It may look like a piece of rubber, but it is just the lens making the board look foreshortened. To compare, 5 degrees, 50 degrees, 5 degrees, 50 degrees. Now a ball is rolled down the board. Notice the apparent speed of the ball. That's on a 50-degree angle. Now the same on 5 degrees. That ball really is rolling at the same speed as the wide angle. 5 degrees, 50 degrees. 5 degrees. Wide angle close-up. Narrow angle pulled back. The effects can, of course, be used to advantage. Here, the child is moving rapidly across the street, seen through a wide-angle lens, and the car is apparently coming quite slowly, shot on a narrow-angle lens. But reverse the situation. Take the child on a narrow angle and the car on a wide angle, and this is the result. Lens characteristics are the same whatever the camera. A BBC film crew use a standard 10:1 zoom with either 4.5 to 45 degrees or 5 to 50 degrees, although by tradition film people refer to them by their focal lengths of 10 to 100 or 12 to 120 millimeters. And since the film is shot to be viewed on television, the results will be the same as from a studio camera. Whether the cameras are on location or in the studio, the director must be aware of their lens characteristics and how to use them. Now, if 3, still on 50 degrees, tracks right into a close-up of Carol, this is the result. The foreground, her nose, is very much bigger than the background, her eyes. Carol on a narrow angle and a wide angle. Same girl, different lens angle giving perspective distortion. If camera 3 now zooms back from a close-up of Carol, it looks all right. Or does it? He could have tracked back, and that would have looked very different. Let's compare. The camera now zooms back in, and notice how the perspective stays the same. The relative distance between the pillars doesn't change, and the girl seems to come towards the camera. And if we zoom out, the same effect is produced. Now let's ask the camera to track in. Notice how the perspective is changing and how we feel that we are moving towards Carol. It can be very revealing. Meet Steve. And tracking back, the same effect. And tracking in again. The picture development looks more real. But in an actual situation, this does not mean that one must never zoom. On the contrary. Nowadays, most studio cameramen can handle their cameras so that a zoom will hardly notice. And they do it like this. If the shot has little or no discernible background, then there will be no apparent perspective, and it will not look like a zoom. Now camera 4 is going to work with some perspective in the shot. If she makes a small move while going in, then this will effectively disguise the zoom. And it looks like this. We can also begin with some foreground and elevate to lose it. Camera 1 moves upwards and zooms in, and his shot looks like this. There are, of course, exceptions to every rule, but if the cameras are trying to create an illusion of reality, then it's usually better to make the camera moves appear more natural. Try to avoid hose piping in on the zoom like this. It is so much better this way. And every BBC cameraman does this as a matter of course. And there's another reason for combining the track and the zoom. It is simply not possible to track on an angle much narrower than about 20 degrees. And to show what happens if you do, camera 1 on the Heron is going to track the length of the studio at top speed onto Steve. This is one shot on 5 degrees, and off he goes. And he stopped just 4 feet away. Notice how bumpy the shot was, like looking through a telescope. Now he's tracking out slowly, and it's still very bumpy. The minimum angle for a smooth track is about 20 degrees, which one is now zooming out to. Now he's getting a smooth track. So remember, track only on a 20-degree lens or wider. Back in the set, and again the characteristics of the different lenses can show both wanted and unwanted effects. Viewed like this, the set looks spacious, grand and deep. We are looking at it on a 50-degree lens. Notice the bottles in the foreground. But this is not good if you are shooting a drama set in, say, a cramped attic or a small room. For that, we would pull our cameras back and shoot on a narrow-angle lens. The foreshortening effect comes into play and makes the whole thing look smaller. To compare, narrow angle, wide angle, back on a narrow angle, in on a wide angle, narrow angle. Now supposing two artists are holding a conversation and we are going to cross-shoot them. This could be a scene from a play or an interview, in the studio or on film. If the cameras are equal distances from the artists and on similar lens angles, we get matched shots. The two artists appear to be an equal distance apart, and the sequence looks natural. But supposing one camera pushes in and gives the same size shot, but on a wide angle. Now when we cross-shoot, the two artists appear to jump in and out at each other. Once again, the size relationship of the foreground to the background is different in the two shots. The problem can happen another way. Supposing a scene has started with this shot on camera 1. A spacious set is established on a wide-angle lens with Steve and Carol in the foreground. The man in the background is just an extra to set the scene. The play progresses to a two-shot of the artists, and the extra has already been forgotten by the viewer. The The director now calls for a tighter two-shot from the establishing camera as the action develops. Look at the extra. He now seems to be almost sitting at the same table. And all because camera 1 has found the close-up from his wide-angle position by just zooming in to a narrow angle. Once again, the foreshortening effect. Another problem with lenses is illustrated by this shot. The designer and lighting TM have created an effective exterior scene, but to show that it is a balcony, the director pulls back, and the illusion is lost. The background is clearly just painted. This is because of the lens depth of field, how much of the shot is acceptably sharp in front of and behind the plane of focus. On a narrow-angle lens, it is only a few inches, but with a wide angle like this, it is several feet. Overlay is superseding painted backdrops, and the depth of field problem comes in again in another way. Here, the background is sharp, and it looks unnatural. If the telecine, or TJ, is shot to be soft, or if the background camera defocuses, then the lens depth of field is simulated, and it looks more realistic. Lens characteristics apply in high and low-angle shots as well. Carol is on the balcony, so...
Oh, Romeo, Romeo, wherefore art thou, Romeo? Deny thy father and refuse thy name.
Shall I hear more, or shall I speak at this?
'Tis but thy name
Here, the
that is
slight
mine.
wide-angle distortion has a
Romeo,
dramatic
drop
effect.
thy name, and for that name which is no part of thee, take all myself.
But this is ridiculous.
Call me but love, and I'll be new baptized. Henceforth, I never shall be Romeo.
A totally different effect is produced by a lens when the camera pans. This composite shot shows camera 4 and its output on a 50-degree lens. Now 4 is going to pan round at a constant speed and zoom in at the same time. Watch the apparent speed of the pan. As she zooms in, the pan looks faster. And the right lens can make someone look as though he's moving faster. This is a wide angle, and this is a narrow angle. More apparent speed and more urgency. So panning on a narrow angle makes action look faster, and on a wide angle it looks slower. The effect of panning. The effect of this lens is obvious. Produced by one of the several available special effects lenses, it is a motorized optical attachment that clips over the front of the camera lens. This is the tunnel lens. It's a wide-angle attachment on the end of a polished aluminium tube. Its effect looks like this. And it's possible to zoom in through the tunnel as well. Attachments like these lend themselves to title sequences, light entertainment programs, and the like. So too does the star filter. Though not strictly a lens, it is nevertheless an optical device that can be swung into shot with obvious effect. Finally, to sum up the characteristics of lenses, watch Carol walking to camera on a 5-degree and a 50-degree lens at the same time. Remember that the wide angle increases perspective and the narrow angle decreases perspective. And remember too that lenses can be the most powerful tools in the studio. Used wrongly, they can destroy the work that so many people have put into your programs. So learn their characteristics and their quirks, and then use your lenses skillfully to enhance the magic of illusion that is television.